All right, guys, we're going to get started again here. To my right, I have Jason Musseter. He is the owner of Musseter Distributing here in Sacramento. You're based in Auburn.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I have Ryan Fry from Sudwork, one of our gracious hosts. We always like to give a little FaceTime to the folks that are supplying the wings and the beer. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. I was just having a conversation during the break. I was told that the three-tier system is un-American. Jason, defend yourself.
Oh man. Well, I can defend what we're doing. On in our market. If you didn't have that, first of all, it's tried and true. So we have great access. The consumers have access to a wide variety of beers in any given retail establishment or bar that they go to. There's choice. If you compare that to, say, Mexico or the UK, predominantly owned by two or three large suppliers that pay for all the space on the shelves, and there's no access for other brands. So imagine America with ABI and Miller Coors as your only choices in any bar or restaurant you go to or off-premise.
Right. And now, Ryan, you guys are a pretty small brewery, but you guys do enjoy that access as a benefit of the three-tier system. So is it un-American? I mean,
it's hard to say it's un-American. I think Americans don't like any restrictions upon us, but at the same time, there's some protections. It's not all good, it's not all bad, but I was just in England and London for Christmas time, and I was trying to find some local craft beer in bars, restaurants, stores. Can't find it because all those retail outlets are owned by big breweries. So you can see when it's not in place, the barriers to entry can be a lot greater. So, and it can be reduced competition to a certain degree. So I'm not saying it's all great, but there are some pluses to it.
Right. So it's actually a neat little starting point for the discussion that I wanted to have with you guys today. I have written down. I'll just read it because why would I not read what's on my iPad? The ways in which craft brewers can work with instead of against their wholesale partners to build better brands and manage an avalanche of new SKUs. So there's a lot of different suppliers out there, all fighting for attention. They're pitching you new products. You're probably one of the guys that is pitching your wholesalers new brands constantly. And it's tough to get attention, and it's tough to own a brand on the taps. It's tough to own a piece of the shelf space, and yeah, there's a lot of complexities that go all the way down the line. If you're not supplying beer constantly, that space is going to somebody else. That's a whole separate discussion. What I want to look at is just the ways that you guys can work together more effectively to build a brand and how you guys manage all those SKUs. So I want to start with you, Jason, to take a look at your business a little bit. You have a neat little backstory of losing some of the bigger brands and then kind of reinventing yourself and being all craft now with some non-alcs as well. Talk to me about your business and how many craft breweries you're currently representing and what you're responsible for selling in.
Yeah, so we have a pretty interesting story. My father used to work for Miller Brewing Company back in about 3 years, 1975 through about 77. I was born in 77. So they purchased distributorship, a small two-man operation in January of 77. Along the way, was able to acquire some very nice brands, Corona, Heineken, Boston Beer, Sam Adams. And all was going well. I was born and raised in the distributorship. So, I knew I wanted to do this ever since I think I was in 6th or 7th grade. And they asked me what I want to do when I grow up. And that was what I wanted to do. So I've been through everything from, recycling cans in the back and the truck docks all the way through. So I've seen a lot. When Miller Coors decided to merge in 2008, we got pushed out. Basically they came to us without really looking at our organization, our future plans, our investments to maybe grow with them. They basically said, you're going to sell to the large distributor in Sacramento, and you don't have a choice. We didn't feel that was right. After everything we'd done for over 30 years, being a really good distributor and won numerous awards. And
sounds pretty un-American.
Yeah, it does. It was. Yeah. So, we fought it in court for a couple of years, and after about the first 6 to 8 months of being in litigation with I think a very large distributor, $1 billion distributor, and Miller Coors. hey man, there's got to be another way. You can't just not, if you're expecting one way out, that's probably going to way it's in. So was able to kind of see. I don't know if I could I could see the future, but I felt like I knew where the industry was going. And this is in mid 2008, late 2008. And so we basically started a self-distribution, specialty division of our company, and started with 4 employees and a manager, and driver sold just a couple of craft brands. Actually, back then, all we had was really Boulder beer, so it was only craft brand, and that was the end of 2008. And now we have about 30 craft brands in our portfolio, and the top local brands in Sacramento, Knee Deep and Auburn Ale House, and Dust Bowl out of Turlock, and just continue to really embrace that. We basically turned the page and said, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to be really good at it. We're going to train our folks, and we're going to go this direction, and just keep pressing.
30 suppliers. How many brands from those suppliers do you think you have?
About the same. There's not a lot, so usually all the suppliers are just one brand.
Well, I mean, I guess Skews.
Skews. Okay, Skews. With craft, we're probably closing in on with draft and kind of one-offs. We got to be close to 850.
Wow.
Just with those 30, because there is a lot. But we kind of embrace that. So that's something you're going to ask about how we deal with it. I mean, with what we do as a small craft-only house, we don't say no to much. I mean, we'll try. That's the thing about us. We really try every package one time. If you guys are going to help, the suppliers are going to help support us. We'll go out there and give it our best shot. I'm not going to say that if it doesn't work, we're going to take it in next year, but we're pretty open to what the creative concoctions that our suppliers are producing. Actually, we really enjoy it.
Right. Now, a somewhat similar story for you, Ryan. You guys came in here and took over the Sudwork brand and kind of changed up the branding a little bit, started introducing some different beers, really doing some great stuff. So maybe tell us a little bit about your story.
Definitely. Teamed up with Trent Yoxine, one of the grandsons of one of the founders of Sudwork Brewing Company. And we grew up here in Davis. I grew up half a mile away from the brewery and watched the brewery be built and drank the beer and loved it. And we got involved when there wasn't really a next step for the brewery. So we recognized that the brewery made great beer and we loved drinking it. There wasn't anything in the marketplace like what we were drinking and or like types of beers that Sudwork was making. So we thought we could breathe some more life into it and take it to the next level. So we were able to team up with a group of employees and other USAVS alumni, family members, and put together a deal to really take on to the next level, next generation. So that's when we started kind of looking at our current portfolio, our German traditional lagers, and started asking ourselves, really what our mission was here, and do we want to be America's answer to imported beers, or do we have something else we thought we were more interested in? And we liked the traditional German lagers, but we thought that the American lager really was kind of off in no man's land in terms of craft beer, and it was being ignored. So we really wanted to focus on redefining what people thought the American lager is, or what they think it is, and showing them different aspects of lagers. So that really was led us to start kind of redoing our branding, redoing our beers, coming out with some new styles, and all kind of focused around that mission. So that was kind of a little bit of the backstory. Right now, we sell our beer all in California for the most part. About 80% is probably Northern California. We're just starting to expand a little bit more into Southern California. We have a few other distributors out of state, but our focus really is locally and really adding value back to this community with our beers and with our just getting involved. So we really want to have a focus on our local community before we overextend ourselves, getting into other markets.
So now, when you guys took over, did you add more brands to the mix?
We did. We added a couple brands. We reinvented a couple brands. So the first thing we did was reinvented one of the first beers that Sudwork made. It was the Munich Helles Lager, a very traditional style lager from Munich, light lager. And it was a great beer. It was one of our favorite beers, but at the same time, it wasn't being positioned properly in the marketplace, and there wasn't enough education around the product. So we wanted to kind of bring it back and look at this beer as a platform to really bring in a little more regional flavor and bridge the gap between the beer consumer and the common beer drinker. So we wanted to bring in that kind of West Coast hop profile with that lager crisp sessionability, where you can kind of drink them over a long period of time, over a longer engagement. So That kind of led us to our first product, which I'm actually drinking right now, our Drive Lager. So
Nice.
we actually just released some cans today. So
First can's off the line.
first cans off the line.
Nice.
So we can talk a little bit about how we made that decision a little bit later. But this kind of set the road for our next beers. And we started introducing some other beers in 22-ounce bottles and in draft. And these were all products of our tasting room. We have a big pilot program here that we started right off the bat. Trent and I have been involved with the brewery about 5 years before we were able to take the brewery over. So we started right off the bat doing a lot of experimentation and getting community feedback through our tasting room. And that was what drove really the styles that we started releasing.
So Jason, when a company like Sudwork and a guy like Ryan come in, start reinventing some things, they add cans, they add 22s, they add more pilot patches, that adds a layer of complexity to your business. And you have it from 30 different suppliers that are all doing that. So talk to me about how you guys manage that and just sort of what that process is like here specifically for your business and in Sacramento.
Yeah, for us, we were lucky to have a pretty good infrastructure just based on, the Miller and the Corona and Heineken. So we had a big enough warehouse, but inevitably when you add, Skews and draft, really, we've really started selling a lot more draft. Our cold box wasn't up to that, so we doubled the size of it last year. And now we're looking at some of these major investments like you guys are probably looking at. It feels like you get to a peak and then you have another peak to climb. So we're going to end up doubling the size of our existing cold box here in the next 6 to 8 months, adding more racking, and then that should get us through the next couple of years. But after that, I'm gonna have to move into a bigger space. Sooner or later, you have to keep up with what's going on. And what got us to this position is having variety, and that's what we represent to the retailers and the consumers. So you really have to embrace that. If we stop giving the consumers and the retailers variety, then what are we really doing? You have to embrace it.
You're building brands?
Brands and variety and choice.
Yeah, but I think there are some challenges to offering so much variety. We see the problems with rotation, not being able to build a brand like the dry hop lager, let's say, right? Something that you guys spent some time creating. It's a great beer. You put this awesome branding behind it. You walk into an account, you put it on, and then you're off a couple weeks later. There are some challenges out there. So in many ways, you're sort of perpetuating that by saying, all right, bring it on, bring on the variety, right?
There definitely is a threshold, but I just don't think we've seen it in our market. If I went to San Diego and tried to do the same thing, I think I'd be in for a tough ride. But Sacramento is still such a growing market, that there is room for growth and room for more variety. And it will come to a head, it will. In the end, we really rely on the supplier, someone like a local supplier being able to help us sell their brand, build their brand in the local market, because eventually that should be the hub of what we're trying to do and build.
Definitely.
As our local market.
Now you guys don't work together. You work with a different distributor here.
We do.
But when you roll out a new brand to them, or when you bring them some new packages, when you bring them these cans, what's their response going to be?
It depends how you present it. You got to make sure you present it properly and you have a plan behind it. So you tell them why you're first introducing the plan. When we reinvented these beers, created some new beers, this was not something we just popped on our distributors. They were part of the discussion. If they're your partner, they should be involved. And so our pilot program is something that we communicate with them on a regular basis. They at least have heard of it. If it's not on the front of their mind, it's in the back of their mind. And so it's not a cold conversation. This is a warm conversation. And then you have to argue your point of why you think this has a place in their portfolio, a place in the retailer shelf spot, and why a consumer wants it on a consistent basis. So if you can explain that and you can explain how you're going to support it and pull it all the way through, then I think it's an easy conversation. But if you're in there just saying, hey, here's our beer, sell it, goodbye, then you're going to have a very tough time.
Right. So your strategy for making sure that your products are get better facings or get the most coveted tap handles is really just re-entrenching with your wholesaler and being the best partner you can be. Talk to me about some of the strategies that you use when you walk into their room and you're going to try to pitch them a new brand or a new package.
But I mean, we first off, when we pitch something new, we try to invite, our locals, people, try to invite them to our brewery and give them that experience, the brewery experience, show them, how it's made and everything, and give them a unique experience, and then educate them on our product, why we're making it, what's unique about it, then educate, where it fits in the market spot, where it fits on the tap, where does it fit in the shelf lineup. So giving them all the tools possible, and then sitting down with them individually and really identifying where within their routes, within their marketplaces, they're going to be focusing this product, and then following through all the way to the end. So I think it's just a lot of communication. There's no tricks, there's no magic act. It's a genuine relationship, and we are in this business, hopefully for generations. Hopefully my family, my kids will be involved, and this is a family business for him. So this is not something where you just come in and it's a straight business deal. You got to build a relationship. It's not something you do in one meeting. You have to do it over and over again, time and time, and that's how you introduce a product. You go out, you introduce it, and then you show them the way, and then they can follow easy. If you expect them to do it, then you're going to be in for a really tough ride.
Right. Jason, you have some great brands and probably some not so great brands, I would imagine, in those 30. You don't have to name them by name, but what are the characteristics that the best brands exemplify, and what are the things that the sort of problematic suppliers are doing poorly?
In the end, there's a lot of great beers out there. And there's also guys who maybe need more work than others. Having representation from the breweries is a big thing for us. The local brands for us, not so much an issue, because we really, they're in the market for the most part. It's the backyard. But some of the other guys that are regional or out of state or whatever, they might produce good beer, but there's a lot of good beer in California. There's a lot of good beer in Sacramento now, so it's very, very competitive. That's the biggest thing. We have some beers that are great beers that just don't get the play that they maybe deserve, because there's other brands here with brewery reps in the market that get more love because they have face time with the retailers. And
then do you get blamed for that?
I think it's a realistic conversation, with breweries. That we haven't had too many that have come back and said, what the hell are you guys doing? Mainly it's like, okay, well, what do you think is going on? And then it's that conversation, like, here's what we're seeing, here's what we believe, here's what I'm hearing, and you got to go from there. But, just keeping in touch with the guys and having those real honest conversations, that's all it is. Like I said, it's a family thing. This is a business, it's a long-term relationship. And I'd love nothing more to pass it down to my 3 kids. But you got to, it's a relationship, a long-term relationship. That's
right.
What it is.
So some of the out-of-state brands, if they don't put feet on the street here, they might have a tougher road ahead in terms of getting that placement or getting the attention from the retail accounts. But you're still probably actively pursuing those brands, and you'd like to represent them here. What's some of your criteria for selecting a new craft beer supplier?
Yeah, at this point, we want to have a well-balanced portfolio, and we have the best local brands. We really do already. That's always going to be our focus, and we'll continue to nurture and grow those. But I really need to balance out our portfolio with some regional, long-standing, traditional, tried-and-true brands that bring the expertise of being able to be in business for 15 to 20 years into our mix to give us that scale. That's what we really need in the end, is to scale up to that next level. That's that next hurdle we're looking for. So, recognizable brands, tried and true, and potentially brands that maybe don't step on the feet of our local brands that are big West Coast style brands for the most part. So just finding a balance for the portfolio to really be able for our sales guys to walk into an account and say, hey, check out our book. What are you looking for? What do you guys need on your menu? How can we help you build a better selection?
Right. Switch gears a little bit. I heard something interesting the other day. I was listening to the Beer Business Daily podcast, Harry and Jen, and they were talking to Joe Whitney from Sierra Nevada. And Joe made a comment. He said that his distributors were actively asking for more Skews, which I thought was crazy, because there's something like 600 new Skews added, or there's been 600 new Skews added over the last 4 years at the grocery level. And just extrapolate that, and we're talking about some heavy shelves with craft beer. But he said some of his distributors were saying, "What do you got? What else do you got for us?" So what's your take on that? Do you want more Skews? Would you prefer it if your suppliers focused on one brand that was performing really well and just dialed in on that?
In the end, yeah, I mean, we're willing to try, like I said, everything one time and see, really there's still a lot of exploration out there. The consumer's a little promiscuous. They're still trying to discover what style they like or what brand or whatever. So we're willing to try, whatever our suppliers are willing to do, at least one time. But I can tell you why Joe Whitney would say that about, Sierra Nevada. I mean, predominantly, if you look across the United States, most of the distributorships that hold Sierra Nevada or sell them are Miller Coors or AB, which are actually fighting an uphill battle right now based on the trends of those mega brands. They're looking for more. They want more presence in these craft accounts. They're trying to find a way to be more relevant to these craft accounts. If you have more seasonal or one-off or limited Sierra Nevada SKUs, all of a sudden you kind of jump up the list a little bit.
But it is sort of weird. I mean, you look at like a brand like Sierra Nevada, and their pale ale is just an iconic craft beer brand. It's a huge part of their business. And when I hear Joe say, our distributors are asking for more SKUs, that's sort of the question in my mind is like, I wonder if they're having a tough time selling some of the stalwart brands that Sierra Nevada is bringing to the table, and maybe that's why they're asking for more SKUs. But at the same time, there are a lot of small breweries out there that probably should be focusing more of their attention on building a brand and having a brand that they can one day call a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. So we're sort of at a crossroads here. I don't know, do any of you guys have a sort of opinion on how much time you should be allocating to doing the fun stuff and how much time you should be allocating on building an iconic brand?
That's tough to say. I mean,
Yeah.
with all of our suppliers, we have a standalone, number one SKU or brand within, style within the brand. So I think that's always good, and that's going to be evident, just based on, say supplier A has 5 SKUs and you place those 5 in, 10 different liquor stores. There's going to be one pretty much that's pretty evident out of those that's going to be the standalone. So obviously that's the one. If you only have 2 spaces on the shelf or 1 space on the shelf, that's the one you put on the shelf. But part of this whole craft revolution is variety and fun. It's brands, but it's also just differentiation and creativity. So I think if we stop doing that, then that's when we're going to see a stall, because people want fun and new.
Ryan, what's
Yeah.
your take?
I think the retailers to a certain degree dictate this, and then also it's up to the breweries to decide if they want to, invest in branding their brewery as their forefront brand, or investing in a brand like, example of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale or Fat Tire New Belgium. They put Fat Tire above New Belgium, and they invested in that brand versus, Sierra Nevada and Pale Ale. And on the flip side, the retailers, there's more and more beer bars popping up, more and more accounts adding more and more taps, and so that drives variety. And then on the other side, more and more new breweries are coming into the play, but they're bringing in 22-ounce bottles like we were talking about earlier. They're not going for 6-packs, so now you're falling short on certain types of package types. So I think being aware of how your product's going to fit into the retail outlets, where it's going to be on the shelf, what package types, and then how it's going to feed into your overall branding strategy. Are you trying to build a beer brand? Are you trying to build a brewery brand? Are you trying to do both, and how they feed together? So I think if you have that when you're looking at it, the decisions start to become a little bit easier, and you can start to find a good balance, good portfolio. We do have retailers asking us for, they don't want just 1 6-pack. They want to have 2 or 3 6-packs because it creates a facing, and they want to have a couple 22s with that. So if you only have a pale ale, you might not even make it into that retailer's outlet because they demand you to have a couple facings to create that billboard effect to draw people into it to try it. So, you got to kind of decide where you're going to be positioning your brand and your package and your product, right, and that should drive it.
You might have one retailer that's asking you for more 22s. You might have another that's saying, like, yeah, we really need you guys to do some cans. We really need you guys to do some 6-packs. And then on top of that, you have on-premise accounts that are saying, like, why can't we get some logs versus some half-barrel? I mean, you have retailers making demands all the time. So how do you make your decision as a supplier to listen to some versus the other? I mean, because there's all kinds of complexities on your back end as well.
Definitely. I think you gotta weigh. We always. I mean, I ask every single day, every single account I go into. What are they looking for? What sells the best? It's always on top of our mind. Then we have to balance that and what's the best for our business, what's the best for our branding long term, and we balance that and we try to find a happy median. We don't let retailers dictate it, but we also listen to them. And same with consumers. We got to see what they're interested in and where they're going. But at the same time, you don't want to be following them. You got to somehow get out ahead of them and give them something that they want without them knowing it. And same with the retailer. So a little bit of a chicken and egg situation, but at the same time, you start to find a balance, and it is tricky. And you do get burned. Some brands don't make it. Some brands do. You got to be flexible. So we have, like I said earlier, our pilot program that really allows us to scale up a style of beer from 20 gallons up to 100 barrels. So we can kind of step that up and decide, all right, from our tasting room, should we scale this up and bring it out into the local retail outlet on draft only? And then if it does well, should we bring it into our restaurant and maybe into 22-ounce bottles? Because 22-ounce bottles are cheaper for the brewery to make, so that's usually why people are going that direction, but at the same time, the retailers are over inundated with it. So you have to have a unique enough product to set yourself apart in the 22-ounce package to really make it all the way to the consumer. So, and for your wholesalers to get behind it as well, because if you're coming out with another 22-ounce IPA, you're going to have a lot of trouble finding a wholesaler and a retailer to really get behind it unless you have a bunch of consumers lining up outside. So.
Right. You guys work the Sacramento market every day, so let's talk a little bit about Sacramento and all these things that we've been talking about up until this point, I think sort of feed into this discussion. What are people asking for out there? What are the trends here? What's the consumer behavior like in Sacramento that you guys notice on the street level?
Yeah, it's weird. Well, I mean, West Coast, with West Coast IPAs, double IPAs, triple IPAs, that I don't see that going away. I mean, the hopheads are raining up here, and that's what we sell the most of, and that's what we get asked the most about. More so, it's weird as there is a nice selection of IPAs and double IPAs. We've been getting requests for lagers, which kind of something they do very well. I mean, this dry hop is amazing. The lagers recently, in the last probably 3 to 4 months, red ales. Just easy drinking red ales, something that maybe pairs better with food, and more session type. So I think there's the uber high level. I mean, specialty is always going to be good. People always want the barrel aged or the limited one-off, strong ale. But yeah, lagers. We see a lot lagers, a little bit of the red ales, and then the double, triple IPAs.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think to add to that, saisons are becoming popular. Obviously outside the lager realm, barrel-aged stuff on the specialty side. You got anything sour, brew and barreled.
It's such a small
IPAs.
base.
Pardon me?
It's such a small base.
Yeah, so you got to bridge that gap between that small base and that big base and find something that can fit in between. So that's the tough part.
Interesting. So where do you see Sudwork then fitting into all that? I mean, you guys are doing lagers, a little bit of session, cans now.
Definitely. We're trying
Hitting
to
on all the
fit
trends, right?
Yeah, we're fitting into in a little bit at a time, and we're gonna follow what is successful for us and what is working and what consumers are enjoying and what's adding value to the community and the marketplace. But how we identified trends, we identified different styles, and we tried to really perfect them and see if that's something that supports our mission, where we want to go with the brewery, and if something that people are also liking. So. But we do a lot of experimentation. We got UC Davis right next door to us. We have the Master Brewing Program on our second floor. We have White Labs R&D lab in our brewery. So we have a lot of this going on a daily basis, and so it feeds into the different styles that we're focusing on. So we're identifying some of these training styles and then bringing it back and looking how we can do it on a lager take or do something different to make it a little bit more unique or give it our flavor. So.
Cutting through the clutter a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta determine, and also you gotta do what you like. So at the end of the day, if the whole brewery's not behind it, but everyone outside wants it, we're gonna do what we like, and we'll find something that we both like, together. Right. So,
speaking of cutting through the clutter, when there's a brand that isn't selling, and it's just not moving, you've put your resources behind it. You were really stoked about brewing it. It did well in the pilot program, and maybe when it hit the shelves, it just didn't do so well. how does that conversation happen between yourself and the supplier, or vice versa, supplier and distributor? And have you had to have any of those conversations and tell one of your brewers, look, this just isn't working, we got to get this out of the warehouse?
Yeah, with particular styles, inevitably they can kind of see it in their numbers, because if you're doing a business, you're getting at least a, monthly order, from some of these guys. And if they, you still have inventory after, 45 or it's just 45 days or so and it's still sitting there, just slowly moving along, someone's going to bring it up. If it's not us, it's going to be them if we didn't catch it. But not all brands work in all markets. And if you don't have, one of the brands that doesn't have market representation, in our market where it is increasingly getting more and more competitive, then, maybe we DC it, but it's a conversation, where you say, okay, this didn't work. How do we go about it?
Are those tough conversations? Have you been on the other end of that conversation before?
Yeah, definitely. We've had, that was some of the first things we had to do is discontinue brands, packages, and we introduced new ones, had to discontinue them. But this is not a surprise. You should know this going into it. We monitor inventory on a weekly basis from our distributors to here, so how things are selling, And for us, we try to snub that out before it even gets to their place because, you're almost too late. You have a lot invested at that point. So we try to snub that out. And then, if it goes in the marketplace, it does well and it tails off. Sometimes you just got to fight the reality. And you got to decide if you're committed enough to go in there and do it yourself and then see if your distributor will support you. Otherwise, you got to make that tough decision and say, hey, it's time to cut it. But
that seems like a tricky balancing act because you look at I think of Tony from Lagunitas, right? He was really pushing IPA, 20, 25 years ago, and I think probably some of his wholesalers and retailers were like, Tony, what are you doing? Nobody's going to drink this hoppy beer. And now look at it.
Well, it comes back to doing
it's unstoppable.
It comes back to, at the end of the day, doing what we're real confident in, what we love, because we can't always listen to everyone because, they are into the trends and outs. So you got to be confident, you got to be around for the long term. And if that's something you believe in, it might not be right for the marketplace, bring it back, keep it in your tasting room, bring it out on draft only, do what makes sense on a business level, and then you can bring it back out and try to, keep it there. But, it has to make sense.
Yeah, it does. And we had a pretty good story about, we were one of the first Northern California distributors to carry Stone. This is back before I was involved. But all we could get, my dad was running the show back then, and I think I was working in the warehouse or driving or something. He launched it, and all we could get was a pallet of 22-ounce bottles, every 6 weeks. We put it on the back of our Miller load from Irwindale, right? But we'd get it, and we'd sell it out in 2 weeks, and we'd be out of stock for 4 weeks. So he ended up getting pissed off. He said, this is giving us ill will as a distributor because the retailers are complaining that we never have this in stock. So we ended up selling it to our neighboring distributor, which I'm going to hold against him forever. But, it comes down to, hey, how do you head, if that's going to be the issue, maybe it's not selling as well as you'd like, but if you have that good relationship, say, you know what, I like your brand. It might not be selling the way we want it to right now, but let's keep it in stock as best we can, keep it fresh as we can possibly keep it. And then, just do the best you can as a distributor for them, even if it's not meeting your hurdles.
But those seem like tough conversations to have.
They are, but it comes down to the relationship. If you have the relationship with your supplier and you're fully vested, it's a partnership. I'm not just going to dump you because, you know what, you didn't sell 100 cases this month, or 2 months in a row you didn't sell 100 cases. It's more than that, to us at least.
Yeah, these are ongoing conversations you're continuously having. It's not like you just walk in there blindly and you just hash it out in one sitting, and then you walk away and it's over. It's like this is a continuous relationship that you're constantly feeding. And if you're not in there for the long haul, your sales will eventually, dictate that.
Right. We wanted to sort of think about this broad issue of how to improve wholesaler craft brewer relationships. Is there an example in either of your guys, in your guys' minds? I'm going to ask both of you this question, but of a situation where you maybe had a little bit of turmoil with a brewery, or you maybe had a little bit of a turmoil with a distributor, and you've patched it up and it's worked out, or it's starting to work out. Is there anything that you can point to in those situations that you really identified as what worked to make those relationships a little bit better? Or maybe you have a really good relationship that's working, and what are the sort of takeaways there? What are the characteristics that make that relationship work for both of you guys, so you guys both have successful businesses?
I think that, again, I'm going to use this again, just constant communication. So for all our, suppliers and brands, we really try and, communicate with them at least once a month. It doesn't have to be a sit-down meeting or something, but I mean, if you're on the phone with them and just, talking about last month's sales or whatever, what's going on in the market, even if it's a short 5-10 minute communication, or email that leads to a conversation, I think that's big, because you really want to feel like that you have that solid communication, and you don't want to have to hide something from them. Just be real. And in the end, we're supporting each other, right? It doesn't do any good if you really have to be behind. There are the brands that we sell, that's what we represent, regardless of what happens. Our guys are going to go out there and sell that brand. We're not just going to walk away from a brand. If I don't like a brand personally, it's never going to get to the streets. Hey, you know what? We're not going to focus on that brand or sell that brand anymore. That's not how it works. It is a relationship, a true relationship, and we'll continue to nurture and build every brand that we have in our house, if it's in our power, within our power.
I think having realistic expectations. I mean, understanding that you're not the only brand, knowing where you fit into that, knowing where you fit into their sales. I mean, if you're not in their top 10 sales and you're trying to meet with them every week and all this stuff, you got to be realistic here. So I think being realistic, having realistic goals, setting some goals, simple goals, like how many accounts you want to be in, how many case equivalents a month you want to be selling, very simple things, and tracking those and communicating them and following up. So you got to do it before, during, and after, and that's key. And just the communication, I think, is really key. So beer is very much face-to-face, very much relationship-based, and maybe it doesn't make sense from the outside, but when you get involved, it all makes sense. And you got to be involved. You can't manage your brand from the outside. You got to be on the streets, and you got to be there. You got to be in the warehouse. You got to be in front of the team. You got to be talking with everyone. And if you're doing that, then unless you're really pissing people off, you should have a great relationship and a great thing. When we first started getting into the business, we thought the distributors worked for us. And all of a sudden you start demanding stuff.
We do.
Yeah. And then you realize, oh wait, they write the checks that come to you. So really they're your customers. So, they're a partner, So, there's a little bit of the both sides, but at the same time, you got to go in there.
The drinker doesn't cut you checks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you got to understand where the money's come from, and you got to understand how it all fits together, and just being realistic about it and going out there. And if you're doing your job and you're getting it done, they're gonna follow. There doesn't need to be a conversation. They're gonna be like, oh my God, these guys are now number 5.